Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Father-Son Packers podcast, your source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Tommy, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my dad, Matt. Dad, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thanksgiving week is upon us.
Yes.
So that means football with only 2 days without football. And plus there's going to be Friday football.
I was going to say, plus Black Friday football. We got everything this week.
Oh, Mom's not going to be happy about football being on an extra day this week.
I know, right? And we got a Thanksgiving matchup coming up for the Packers, Packers-Lions. Hopefully it won't be as bad as the last one, or a lot of people's Thanksgivings are going to be ruined. We're going to hope for the best, but that is not what we are here to talk about today, listeners. We are still here to break down the Chargers game before we preview the game against the Lions later this week, but let's at least stay in this moment because the Packers got to win, Dad. They got to win against a pretty decent opponent in the Chargers. Now, we'll talk all about whether it was more about the Packers winning or the Chargers losing. But anyway, it's still in the win column for... What were you going to say?
In the sands of history, nobody's going to remember how the Chargers chargered this game.
Yes, but they'll definitely still remember the game, I'm sure. This game will certainly be remembered, just not how it was won or lost. But right. Anyway, in this game, Packers win 23-20 on a late fourth quarter drive from Jordan Love to take the lead with a touchdown pass to Romeo Doubs down the left sideline. What a play, what a game. Really good game from Jordan Love, which we'll be talking all about. But Dad, just feels good to get back in the win column. Packers are 4-6, and don't look now, but they are technically in 8th in the NFC.
We're only one spot out of the playoffs. I saw that. It's like, and we're only one game back in the loss column after the Vikings lost.
Is that? I thought we were 2 games back in the loss column still. Is it 1? Oh, because they're 6-5. They haven't had their bye yet. Oh, yeah. That's very interesting.
Only one back in the loss column. I know. Isn't crazy?
Very interesting. Doesn't really feel like that should be the case.
No, it doesn't. I also want to give a shout out that we were both very close with our predictions. You know, I had the Packers score right at 23, and you're only 1 point off on each score.
Yeah, I had 24-21 and 23-20. Yeah. You know, make an extra point here or there. I could have had it right. You know, we were almost there. But anyway.
And listeners might say, how come you never talk about this in any of the other post games? You know, we'll talk about the ones we want to talk about.
Yeah.
We're awesome.
That's up to us. That's our decision.
That's a discretion of the podcaster.
Yes, and we have so much to talk about from this game because I think there was a lot of good to be taken out of this game, especially on the offensive side of the football. Defensive side of the football, maybe not so much, but they were a little outmatched in this one. But Dad, before we get into any of that, just wanted to pitch a couple of things. If you like what you hear today, come give us a follow on Twitter at FatherSonPacker. We tweet out when we have articles we find interesting. We tweet out when we have new episodes out. We tweet out pieces of statistics that we find interesting from our research for these episodes, pieces of Packers news, Packers videos, etc., etc., etc. One-stop shopping for everything Titletown. You can keep up with the pack there. Once again, that's at FatherSonPacker. And then subscribe to us on your podcast platform of choice, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. We even put all our episodes out on YouTube. You can subscribe to us there. It would really help our numbers. But Dad, before we get into the meat of this game, as we are breaking this down Monday night, a little bit of Packers news, some roster moves for this upcoming game against the Lions on Thursday. 2 moves. First is that Packers are signing running back James Robinson to the practice squad, releasing Christian Young. The next is that the Packers have signed Patrick Taylor to the active roster from the Patriots practice squad and are cutting Dallin Levitt, a longtime special teamer the past couple of years with the Packers. Heavy amount of special team snaps for him are going to be going out the door. He hasn't exactly been great in his time in Green Bay, but that is going to be something to keep an eye on who fills those spots. Zane Anderson's been playing pretty well on special teams, so I'd imagine it's going to be him. But something to keep an eye on there. I've heard some
speculation that people thought, well, actually, since he's playing kind of well, then made it easier to get let Levitt go. And signing Patrick Taylor kind of made the most sense out of the options that were out there.
Oh, 100%, because we'll talk about in this game as we go over the injury report next. Packers lost a few running backs in this one. And then, Dad, the last bit of Packers news in this one is that they are designating Darnell Savage to return from IR. So possibly going to have him back for Thursday. But we'll see.
We'll see if they're willing to do that. Kind of depends on just how ready he already was before they designated him.
Yeah.
Basically, he'd have to already be ready today to play on Thursday.
Exactly. But that's just something to keep an eye on. But like we already said, though, Dad, let's move on next to the injury update because this was a pretty tough day for injuries from both teams.
Rough day. Yeah.
People getting hurt all up and down the field. I'm just going to read them off. like we already said, Packers have added 2 running backs, Patrick Taylor to the regular roster and James Robinson to the practice squad. And that is because the Packers sustained 2 running back injuries in this one. The first of which was Aaron Jones with a knee injury. Looked worse on the field than it ended up being, it sounds like. Post-game reports were that it was not an ACL. We're still waiting for results from the MRI, but it sounds like mostly good news for Jones. According to LaFleur after the game, he didn't think it was serious, and Jones was in good spirits. And then the other running back injury was Emmanuel Wilson, who dislocated his shoulder, it sounded like. It sounded like the x-rays were negative there, so nothing super long-term, but probably not going to be available, either one of them, to play this week. And that's why those running back additions were so paramount to have.
On a short week with only 3 days off. I mean, yeah, they might have popped Wilson's shoulder back in, but I don't think he's going to be ready to take a hit on it in just 3 days.
Yeah, and this was, I mean, they were talking about maybe having DeGuara line up at running back at times, but DeGuara got injured as well. He had a hip injury. Beyond that, Musgrave left and came back in. We'll be talking all about the injury report for the game later in this week and just seeing how that progresses. Nixon sprained an ankle and came back in. Campbell left with a neck injury. And Dontavian Wicks was in concussion protocol after the game. So a lot of different players that are in danger.
Yeah, I didn't even see where that happened. I think they also said he had another injury as well. Was it a knee?
I believe it was also concussion. In addition to the concussion, the knee. I believe the concussion happened on his big run, his big run after catch. That is the one where he caught it like about 7 yards downfield. Their defender missed the tackle and he ran for like another 25. Is where I saw it reported as being. I didn't see on video where it happened, but that was what the reporting was that I had read. But Dad, that's it for the injury report. We're obviously going to have more as the week goes with this game coming up on Thursday to talk about injury-wise. So that's why we're not diving as deeply into it as we might normally do, because we're going to have more information in a couple of days that'll kind of outdate anything we could talk about here. But Dad, any thoughts on these? I thought, we're going to talk about in a second. A.J. Dillon's like raw line of rushing. It's not very good, but I actually thought he played really well in this game, personally. I know he only averaged like 2 yards a carry, but I'll explain that. Why I felt he played well later. Dad, anything else on the injury report, or do you want to move on to the meat of our game breakdown?
We can move on to the meat of the breakdown. We had bad injuries. They had bad injuries. Bosa went out early. For them, it was pretty rough. It was
definitely rough for both teams. Just one of those days, week 11, kind of getting into the dog days of the season. But Dad, let's go to the meat of the breakdown, like you said. Biggest moment of the game, we do this by ESPN win probability swing, so kind of something more objective. And in this one, Dad, it's exactly what you would think it would be. It was the touchdown throw from Jordan Love to Romeo Doubs. This was the biggest play of the game, with 2:33 left in the game to take it from a 64.4% chance of the Chargers winning. They had the lead at the time, 20-16, and it made it 23-20 Packers, which swung it all the way to a 71% chance of the Packers winning, which swung the win probability 35.4%. Which was, difference in score in the game and difference in who was favored to win at that point. And obviously the biggest play of the game, whether you're going by the numbers or whether you're just watching the game, is a go-ahead touchdown score in the fourth quarter. Numbers reflect that. But if we just want to talk about it for a second, I mean, what a play from Doubs to go back for that ball. And he now is just 2 touchdowns off the league lead for receiving touchdowns in the league at 7.
See, that close was 7.
Yes,
I guess I did know that. Yeah, he was at 6.
He was at 6. He now has 7, and I believe Tyreek Hill is the league leader at 9. So now he is 2 back from league leader in touchdowns. Not bad. But hey, if you take out,
and this was I liked this throw. It was still maybe slightly underthrown, but he got it there a little earlier, slightly deeper, so it was over the defender's reach, and Doubs was able to come back and get it.
I mean, that's one of those ones you have to have, because the Chargers, have you seen the replay of this? Where the Chargers linebacker takes out his own corner, runs full speed into him, and that's why Doubs is wide open?
I guess did I see that? I'm not sure if I saw that replay.
Yeah, so if you go find the replay of the all-22 angle, Kenneth Murray runs full speed into the corner, who's not like dropping back into quarters for some reason, and Romeo Doubs is just running down the sideline free as a bird. And I think if they had missed that, I mean, talk about a golden opportunity. Thank goodness they capitalized on it. Thank goodness Doubs made his quarterback right, because it wasn't a perfect throw, but it was good enough. And Doubs came back for it, which is what we've been begging some receivers to do all year, and definitely the swinging point in the game. But Dad, since we're talking about offense, do you want to go just straight into our offensive breakdown and talk about some things that caught our eye?
Sure. Let's go. Let's do offense first.
Okay, well, first a little bit
And so I guess you could start with what they're saying.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to start off with what they're saying, which is a little quote from the coaching staff or the players each week. This is per Ryan Wood on Twitter, and this was a Matt LaFleur quote about Jordan Love. Quote, really proud of Jordan, just the poise that he showed, the leadership that he showed. He made some big-time plays. And, Dad, that kind of transitions us into, I think, my biggest overall positive in this one. And that is just the play of Jordan Love overall. He had another really good game, 3 games in a row, stacking success. I think this was personally his best performance. Yes, it was against a Chargers unit that is not the strongest on defense, but a career high 322 passing yards, first time over 300, first time for any Packers quarterback over 300 yards in 2 years. Over 2/3 of his passes completed at 67.5%. We know earlier in the year he was really struggling keeping that completion percentage up, so that's big for him. 27 of 40 on the day. Third highest yards per attempt on the season for him at 8.1. The deep ball also was really, it seems to be coming together a little more for him each week. He completed 2 passes over 20 yards and 4 more between 10 and 20. Passer rating of 109 or better in last 3 games on passes over 20 yards. And this is per Zach Jacobson on Twitter, who is in turn referencing PFF. Jordan Love on throws of 20 plus yards in his last 3 games is 9 of 15 for 283 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 130.3 passer rating. He had the 6th highest EPA per play this week amongst quarterbacks in week 11 and 10th highest completion percentage over expectation amongst quarterbacks in week 11. And 5th in the league, this was before Monday Night Football, in composite EPA per play plus completion percentage over expectation. So just like combining those stats and essentially weighting them equally in week 11, and is 7th over the last 3 weeks. So like I said earlier, he's really putting together a nice 3 weeks here. He's stacking successes, which is all we asked for him this year, is to like show some more consistency. And he's having some high level throws. He still needs to have more down to down consistency, but we're at least seeing some game to game consistency at this point. And I know Chargers defense is not great, but this is what you hope for a quarterback to do against a defense that isn't great. Really carve them up, throw for over 300 yards, throw for 2 touchdowns, don't make mistakes. Dad, like we've said so many times this year, the biggest thing is how Love plays. What did you think of his performance in this one?
I thought once again he looked good. I mean, we had a long stretch where he just wasn't making enough big plays. He couldn't complete the downfield throws, and you just can't really live and be competitive, be like a contender, let's say, without getting some big plays. You can't just always grind out 14, 15 play drives successfully. And so there was always this reservation about, is he going to be able to do enough? And the last few weeks, we're seeing more and more of him able to make those throws when they're available.
And the thing is,
and
with
so
Love,
that's really encouraging.
Well, I was just going to say with Love right now, he doesn't have the best accuracy in the world. And so if you're going to have some misses on short throws, you need to make up for that with hitting like the big throws down the field, which is something he was not doing in the middle portion of the season against teams like the Raiders, the Broncos, the Vikings, etc. And once again,
he was not getting those downfield throws. The other thing he's doing is he had a few like crazy arm angle wraparound defenders throwing on the move throws as well.
And crazy running out of the pocket, reset like while running left to throw slightly back to your right in the middle of the field, the one to Wicks from like their own like 8-yard line that he hit early.
Yeah, and I think maybe the one to Reed on the third down conversion was another similar.
And just,
nice throw.
Just making plays the whole game long. And I would say arguably his best game of the year. All that matters is his development for this year. And it's nice to see him kind of, making his way back to a level where I think a lot of Packers fans can feel confident. If he plays like this the rest of the season, he should start again next year. And I think there were question marks about that a few weeks ago.
There was a 5-game stretch where I was like, are we in the running for one of the top 2 picks?
I mean, yeah. I said on podcast, I was like, this is the worst team in the league right now. And I stand by it because they were playing like the worst team in the league. But this is kind of more what we thought.
It was true in the moment.
It was. And maybe a little reactionary, but at the time, I think they were playing like the worst. They would have lost to almost anyone in the league the way they were playing. But this performance from Love, as well as from the young skill players, which I'm going to throw to you in a second to talk about, is more what we had in mind in terms of expectations for this year. Is like, hey, They're not going to be perfect. They're going to lose some close games, but they're going to have promising flashes from a lot of different players. And Dad, they had a lot of promising flashes from some of the young pass catchers in this one.
Yeah, so that was one of my good thing for the offense. For the Wookiee. Do they have Wookiees on the team? That'd be a good tight end. They have Chewbacca on the
we
team.
need someone to block at this point, a little more at least.
But rookie wide receivers, not Wookiee wide receivers. Dontavian Wicks just gets open. I mean, that's all he has. It might be a useful skill for a pass catcher. He had 3 catches for 91 yards. Led the team with a ridiculous 6.09 yards per route run. And in yards after the catch per reception was 16.3. According to Next Generation Stats, he was second on the week to Brandon Ayuk in yards after catch per reception over expected at plus 9.8. So he wasn't just like running wild open. He was just getting even more yak than would be predicted.
And I would say just that I do think that is a bit buoyed by that last catch he had, where it really was more about they should have tackled him completely dead stop standstill, and he got another like 30 yards out of it. And I think he did really well to get like the last 15 yards of that run after catch, because I thought they definitely should have had him at least another 10 yards sooner. But the initial contact, I think, is where that over expectation comes, because I don't know what 43 is doing. I believe that's who it was. I don't know how he does not tackle him there. I don't know what happened to him. He just bounced off him like he hit a brick wall. I'm so confused.
That was going both ways. You might say.
That's fair. But anyways,
maybe it was something in the grass out there. But also, over the last 3 games, he's averaging 3.8 yards per route run, which would be second in the league if it was for the whole season to Tyreek Hill. Unfortunately, he did have the one drop.
Yep.
But it was one of the few times where he wasn't like wide open while he was making the catch.
Yeah,
and he did have it in his hands, and he could have held it in, but did not.
Yeah, he ended the day with 3 catches for 91 yards. Also drew a pass interference penalty, but he did also have that drop. But I would say, maybe cancel those out. Led the team in receiving yards in this one. But Dad, he was not the only young pass catcher that was dominating out there. He was certainly one of them. But for my money, I thought Jaden Reed was the most impressive player on the field for the Packers today. What do you think?
Yeah, so I have him there as well with receptions and rushes. He was second only to Dillon in touches with 7. And if you have like intended touches or whatever with the targets, he led the team in targets with 6 and had 3 carries. He led the team in rushing yards with only 3 carries for 46 yards. And he showed some great bursts to get around the corner. And he had on the week going into Monday night, he had the fastest speed of the week per Next Gen Stats at 21.52 miles per hour.
That has to be on that run along the right side where he runs.
I think so. When he gets to the touchdown, he has some good ramp time to get up to full speed. Gets around the corner. There's good blocking, but some of those good blocks, I'm not even sure if he needed them. He was going so fast.
There's some good blocking, and there are just some horrible angles taken by specifically Asante Samuel Jr. I watched that replay. I'm like,
you think so late getting back across as well? No,
he just takes like
and then he goes
angle I've ever seen.
He goes towards the line of scrimmage and is just out of the play.
Yeah, he's a good player, but I don't know what he was doing on that play.
He's had a bunch of good games. I kind of liked him coming out. Remember we talked about him as a possible
yeah, for sure.
Draft target, maybe I was thinking he might be good to get in the second round, and maybe that's where he went. I don't remember.
But yeah, 46 rushing yards for Reed, 46 receiving yards for Reed. He had an excellent day. Kraft had his biggest play of his career so far. Almost had a touchdown, just a few inches away from.
That's in my things that made us think.
Okay, well I won't say too much else about it. Luke Musgrave beat Derwin James 1-on-1 on an out route for a first down, like a big play early in the game. Beyond that, I mean, just the rookies were really showing out in this one, Dad. Emmanuel Wilson showed some good stuff before he got hurt, I thought. And yeah, the
could not be outshining the second-year players.
Yes, 100%. 100%, I think. I mean, I think Dobbs is having a good year, but we've chronicled Watson's struggles so far this year. I think he can still put it together, and he had a touchdown in this one. But we've chronicled that he's going through a bit of a sophomore slump. Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks it seems every week they're making the big play that's the difference in the game, or that's keeping them close. It seems like every week. I mean, we just saw Jaden Reed last week against the Steelers, was probably their best player in that game too, arguably. But
yeah,
Dad,
I had him as my player of the game last week.
Yeah, I'm spoiler alert for this one.
He had another good one this week.
Exactly. Spoiler alert for this one. He's my player of the game this week, and we'll talk about it later.
I think we flipped.
I know, right? For me, I had one more positive in this one, and I specifically wanted to call it out because by the raw numbers, AJ Dillon did not have a great game. 14 carries for 29 yards with 2.1 yards a carry actually looks awful. But I actually thought he played well in this game. On the surface, it looks bad, but 8 of those 14 carries were deemed as successful carries. A lot of short yardage situations that he had to go out there and get, and he made happen. That's a 57% success rate. Keep in mind that the best run success rate in the league is the Ravens at 46.7% this year for a whole run offense, that is. So, like a very successful day for him. Also added on 4 receptions on 4 targets for 32 yards and had his 4th highest PFF grade on the year for whatever that's worth, however much mileage you choose to give that. It's just another piece of data. But I just wanted to shout him out because I think anyone who looks at the box score for this game is like, man, Dillon played terribly. No, I think if you actually watch the game, you'll see there were a couple negative runs he had where it's just like he's getting hit 5 yards in dead to rights in the backfield. It was not blocked up for him. And a lot of the other parts of the game where they gave him a chance and they needed him to get like 2 yards to get it on 3rd and 1 or a few yards to keep them ahead of the sticks. He was constantly churning out positive yards in this game. And I wanted to shout out that I thought he played well despite a quiet day in the box.
He had some
score.
good first down conversions. I don't know how many first downs he got in the game. I just rewatching part of it, and you saw that one of them with like 3rd and 2, and he got 4. Yeah, and not well blocked for him. He just powered through people.
Yeah, just powering through people. They PFF has him with 3 first downs on the day.
3 first downs. Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, just generally a very, I would say, quiet but successful day at the office for AJ Dillon on offense.
But also at the offense. At the offense.
Dad, did you have any other positives you wanted to note, or do you want to talk about maybe some negatives on the offensive side of the football?
Those were my positives. I just stuck to the wide receivers since you had talked about Love and Dillon already, and there are some small, but let's go on to what we to the negatives.
Okay, what did you have as a negative for the offense? Because I wouldn't say it wasn't a perfect game. There were definitely some problems up front at times.
Yeah, and what I had as a negative just kind of fits into what we just talked about, that Dillon's game was better than it appeared because the run blocking was not that great. It seemed like just watching it to the eye that the O-line was having trouble opening up holes, especially in the middle for running room. Like
with the added context that this is one of the worst run defenses in the league.
I know.
And they were not really
able to do much.
The run blocking grade
for the team. Yeah, the run blocking grade for the team was below average per PFF at 56.4, which is like really disappointing since it was the Chargers who were just getting blown off the line last week by the Lions. And the Chargers' run D is below average for like half of their games per PFF this year, and they're 24th against the run by DVOA coming in. So we were both hoping for a more of a get right game for the run.
And they just,
offense.
and
they just had trouble
moving anyone.
The best runs were Reed on the outside.
Yeah, they couldn't win inside at all. They were not really moving the line much at all for the Chargers.
And Jenkins and Runyon were both below average in run blocking. Both had bad run blocking grades. Myers was a little bit above average. Their best, I think, run blocking grades were Tom and
Nyman.
Maybe it's Nyman, I think.
Yeah, which is something that...
So that's not helping run up the middle.
No. And that's something that we'll talk about when it's like things that made us think, is this line rotation that they're going with. I don't...
What was going on there?
Have you ever seen a team just like rotate tackles, like drive to drive? It's so odd to me. It's so like that they don't... I get why they're doing it because Walker has struggled at times, but Walker's on contract next year and he's younger, and Walker's probably a better pass protector, but Nyman's a much better run blocker and Nyman's more experienced. It's just a weird situation to be in. And I guess it's more unpredictable than maybe we're giving the Packers credit for because they expected to have Bakhtiari, but at this point it's week 11. It's like, I think we can pick a guy at this point, but I don't know.
If you're switching out offensive linemen because you want to run with one and pass with the other, that's not good either.
It's not great. No, you have half of.
It's like, I guess they're going to run now.
Yeah,
I guess they're going to run now.
And
it's going to pass now.
I do feel like not great, like criticizing this decision as someone who had been calling for Nyman to play. The rotation is weird to me. I don't know how I feel about it, to be honest. Did you have any other negatives though, Dad? Because I also had negatives on the pass blocking side for the Packers. Or did you have anything else you wanted to say about the run blocking?
That was pretty much it. That sort of as a whole, they weren't good, and in the middle, particularly, they graded poorly.
Yeah,
and were having trouble moving people.
For me, the pass blocking was also a negative in this one. Per PFF, another 13 pressures allowed, which is tied for third most on the season allowed for the Packers, after giving up 13 just last week as well. This time, though, it was 3 sacks allowed as opposed to 1. And Jordan Love's time to throw was a full 0.3 seconds, 10% shorter than last week. So we thought the pass blocking was poor last week. It was even worse this week. Just something to kind of keep in mind that past 2 weeks, they've been given up a decent amount of pressure. And I think the tackles, if I remember correctly, performed pretty well in this one all the way around. But just on the interior, if I can just double check this really quick, they just struggled to keep everything in front of them. On the day, Elton allowed 2 pressures, Runyon allowed 2 pressures, and then Tom and Walker only allowed 1 each. And some of those pressures looked like they were not earned by the offensive line. They were more on just blitzes and more about Jordan Love. Jordan Love did hold the ball longer in this one, I thought, at times, and some of those sacks were more on him. But, as a time to throw number on the whole, and it's a bit noisy in terms of there are a lot of plays where there isn't pressure, and it's more about they were throwing some more screens out there because I think they didn't necessarily respect the Chargers tackling, I guess, is a nice way to put it. But I think on the whole, still not a great day from the offensive line in terms of protecting Love, although the tackles were better in this game. After Walker gave up 5 pressures last week and gave up only 1 this week, I do suppose there's a silver lining there. But on the whole, still letting some pressure through.
Yeah, and so it might be that I feel like I was just trying to look up the true pass sets where it's not like a screen or something else. And yeah, that Runyon did really poorly, PFF grade. Nyman wasn't very good. I mean, Walker was much better at pass blocking than Nyman was in this game anyway. The person actually who did best for true pass sets was Walker.
Yeah. And, he's been up and down, but this was definitely a better game for him, for sure. And I even saw him getting after it a little bit in the run game. There was a couple plays where he's running out in space, putting his body on some guys down the field. You like to see it.
I see. It surprises me that he's not better as a run blocker because he was a bit of a mauler and liked to push people down and land on them in college.
He's got good size, too, for the position. But I don't know. Maybe, it's only his second year in the league. Maybe he just needs a little more functional strength like Zach Tom did coming into this year. And now we see Tom's just the best at anything on the line, it seems like right now. Dad, did you have any other negatives on offense, or did you want to move to some things that maybe thought us think?
Yeah, so one of the things that made us think is a little bit of a negative. If I could go first.
Sure, go ahead.
So I didn't like the very first possession. I didn't like the 2 calls on 3rd down and 4th down that ended that first drive. They were moving the ball okay. They got Dillon was just barely short of the first down on 2nd down. And then they decided not to go for the tush push on 3rd and 1 or a short one. And they lost yardage. So it became harder. And then they pass it to Musgrave out in the flat and ask him to then turn upfield and run and break a tackle with the guy at him, which is like his least effective
skill. It's not his skill. Yeah.
So it's the weakest part of his game. So I felt like those were just bad play calls for the situation to try to get that first down. I think they could have gotten it more easily with just some better play calling.
Yeah. And
so that was both a negative and a thing that made me think. It's like, can you please start making calls that fit the abilities of your players?
Yeah, and something that made me think, which I kind of piggybacked off of your play calling thing, is I wasn't a big fan of not throwing on 3rd down on the last drive. On 3rd and 6, they ran up the middle for 2 yards to force the Chargers to use their last timeout. I thought they should have thrown and tried to put the game away entirely, especially in only a 3-point game. And according to Ryan Wood on Twitter, Matt LaFleur agreed. Matt LaFleur called the conservative play calling at the end. He said he was embarrassed by it, the quote around the word embarrassed. He said that they sent a run call on 3rd and 6, and they wanted it changed at the line of scrimmage if that run call wasn't there. It wasn't there, the run look, that is, but LaFleur deemed it a, quote, bad situation, end quote, for Love, and didn't think it was fair to ask him to like pivot to a pass play on 3rd and 6 with a minute and a half left and one timeout left for the opponent. And Matt LaFleur thought that the Packers should have called the timeout there, and he pretty much gave the mea culpa. But that was something that I wanted. I also wanted a way to include that quote in there because I thought it was interesting that Matt LaFleur wishes he had been more aggressive there. I also wish Matt LaFleur had been more aggressive there because honestly, if you had told me that Justin Herbert was going to have the ball at the 25, like with a timeout left in a minute 20 seconds, I'd be like, yeah, he's going to get a field goal. Like, and he should have had a field goal, which we'll talk about when we talk about the defense. Like, the Packers got bailed out again by a drop by a Chargers receiver. But yeah, so that was something that made me think. I was like, why are we not just trying to put this away here? Let's play to win. Let's not play to not lose. But yeah, I just wanted to be able to include that quote there. Dad, anything else on the offense, or do you want to move over to the defensive side of the football?
So the other thing I was thinking was the Kraft run after the catch that we were talking about, where he, breaks a tackle, hurdles a defender, and runs to the end zone, makes a Lambeau leap, even though if it wasn't actually a touchdown. He got his Lambeau leap in.
He was this close.
His cleats hit the white, but just see him able to run through tackles, keep his balance after getting hit and jump over people. It's like all the stuff that we could see on tape in college that you don't ever see from Musgrave.
Yeah.
And I was like,
and it's not even a shot at Musgrave.
I want to see Kraft play more.
Yeah.
And show what he can do. It's like, okay, we've been waiting.
Well, I think
see
early
play.
in the season, Kraft was like missing assignments to the point
where
it's like,
he wasn't ready. We've been waiting.
Yes.
We've been waiting for this because he wasn't ready yet. And now it's like, ooh, maybe he's ready. We'll start seeing some of these plays.
And he was blocking well last week. If I believe it was last week. Yeah, on the Dillon 40-yard run last week against Pittsburgh, Kraft kind of blows that open with a crack block inside. But yeah, I think it's exciting from him. That play, I feel like, gets a free like 10 to 15 yards against the Packers every time when the tight end comes across the formation and then leaks out into the flat and just turns upfield. If we could just start spamming that ourselves, I think that would be excellent. I would love that. But Dad, I totally agree. I'm excited to see more Tucker Kraft. It seems like he is kind of more firmly established himself as that number 2 tight end now.
Yes, I think he's starting to earn more snaps.
Yeah, definitely. But let's move on to the defensive side of the football, Dad, where things were okay. This is what they're saying. Matt LaFleur, specifically on the late game defenses, per Matt Schneidman of The Athletic on Twitter. Quote, I've got to give Joe Barry, that is, a ton of credit. He was playing some single safety there, which I don't think a lot of people would, but that's the style of quarterback you're going against. If you have a lot of softness in your coverage, he's going to make you pay, end quote. Dad, what are your thoughts on that quote about Joe Barry from Matt LaFleur? I take it that the softness in coverage apparently only applies at end of game when the opposing quarterback can take advantage of it. I guess that's just something that the rest of the game is totally fine to run.
It's okay to let him make you pay the rest of the game.
And that was mostly a joke because I do think Barry has been better about that recently, especially considering the fact that he's down to like 3rd and 4th and 5th stringers in the secondary. So I'm not even doing this to clown on Barry. I thought Barry called an okay game. It wasn't great. It was better last week against Pittsburgh. I think he just got kind of bailed out by some Chargers mistakes in this one. But at the same time, he's not playing with a full deck. He is playing with 7. He's playing maybe metaphor.
That can be taken lots of ways.
I meant personnel-wise. He's playing with mostly two 7th-round picks, an undrafted guy, and a kind of journeyman free agent like special teamer on his back end right now, which I don't think anyone would have a particularly large amount of success against Justin Herbert. I don't think any coordinator's doing a whole lot with that. So I do want to add that as a caveat to all that we're talking about. At the same time, though, Dad, definitely some pluses and some negatives in this one. What do you want to start with? Positives or negatives in this one for the defense?
Let's start with the negatives.
Okay.
Let's start with the negatives. Then it was something good on a Victory Monday.
Okay. Well, let's start with the negatives in this one. I don't mind leading us off. The main negative that I had was that the pass defense wasn't great, I guess. But like I said, the caveat that they're dealing with some injuries on the back end, and just some not ideal depth overall. Justin Herbert on the day was 21 of 36 for 260 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think if you told anyone coming into the game that would be his box score leaving the game, everyone would be like, wow, defense did a really good job, all things considered. Not necessarily the case if you watch the game. The Chargers had 6 different drops in this game. And if you just gave him the 4 most basic, most egregious drops, I'm talking the Don Parham one on 4th down early. I am talking the 2 Keenan Allen ones, one of which would have been a touchdown. And I'm talking the Quentin Johnson one at the end. That would have he would have ended up being 25 of 36 for 324 yards and 3 touchdowns. And there were still 2 more drops beyond that. I mean, it was just a really rough day with the sun. The sun was in the Chargers receivers' eyes all day, apparently. Overall, PFF, like I said, had the Chargers with 6 drops. And even despite that, without any of the funky math of adding in what those drop yardage would have been, Herbert still had the 8th highest EPA per play amongst quarterbacks in Week 11 and had an elite 92 PFF grade, which is just off the charts insane. And like I said, I get that Herbert carves a lot of people up, but it was pretty free out there. 10 catches for over 100 yards for Keenan Allen, and he should have had another touchdown and another handful of yards, but he just dropped ones that hit him right in the chest.
I didn't hit his numbers so hard it bounced off of his pads.
Yeah, did
especially
you see
that one at the goal line?
There's a theory going around that Herbert just throws the ball too hard, which interesting theory, I guess. But anyway, I didn't think the pass defense was great in this one in terms of coverage. Obviously, it's hard to expect too much, but that was my big negative in this one. And then the other I had was just quarterback running. They let Herbert kind of run all over them. Season high in rushing yards for Herbert at 73 yards. His previous high was only 27 yards. Season high yards per carry as well at 9.1. Previous high was only 5.7. And some pretty big high leverage moments where Herbert was able to run and keep plays alive. There was a 2nd and 16 where he ran for 11 yards to make a 3rd and 5 that they then converted. There was a 28-yard scramble on 3rd and 7. And then he ran for 2 more first downs throughout the game as well. So not just kind of nothing scrambles, scrambles that had big effects on the game. And this had kind of not bitten the Packers yet so far this year. But last year and the year before, they were really bad at defending quarterback.
They had trouble against the Falcons.
That's true. Yes, Ritter did give them
and
problems.
Just like this game, before the game, we talked about how, this quarterback doesn't run that much.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't have to worry about it too much, and then they run all over us.
And also,
we got to stop saying that before the game.
And also, just that's what's making me think of this. Is just last week, Kenny Pickett ran for a key first down right at the end of the 4th quarter to kind of burn a little more clock off the end and leave the Packers, not enough time to score again. But yeah, so definitely something to think about there is that they got to, at some point, right, find a way to stop quarterbacks running on them. I don't really know what you do, because it is a bit of a problem in terms of pick your poison. Everyone's like, oh, we hate zone. We want them to play man. Well, when you play a lot of man, a lot of players have their backs turned to the quarterback, and the quarterback's going to have places to run.
The other thing I felt like what's happening is we totally lost containment in the center. Yes, everybody's rushing wide, and then he has just a wide open lane to rush straight up the field.
And some of it was players not finishing plays. Wyatt had him one-on-one in space.
Oh,
and he just ran right around him.
Yeah. Did he even make contact?
Nope. Maybe a hand. He maybe got a hand on him, but yeah, just ran right around him. And so it's you just got to finish plays there. Dad, what did you have as negatives for the defense?
So I mentioned just the pass catchers were getting open downfield. I mean, there were open players the Parham drop. He was wide open. Allen twice his drops were easy catches open, and they converted several wide open plays. And then rearing its ugly head again, bad tackling. So they had 12 missed tackles this week. It's their 3rd worst PFF tackling grade of the year. And the one that got me the most was is this even a bad tackle? The really bad angle / tackle attempt by Owens on the touchdown by Smart.
Yeah.
I was how did he get all the way to the end zone off of this play?
It's one thing to not be there in coverage, and then just to let him just waltz samba. He was doing the mambo down to the end zone. It was. Yeah. I don't know how.
They kind of gifted. I felt like they gifted them a touchdown in that particular play. So that was just too easy to get all the way to the end zone with that missed tackle. Didn't make him work for it.
Yeah. Any other negatives you wanted to add? Because I 100% agree. The tackling was bad again in this one. It was bad last week. Maybe it'll be good on Thursday. We can only hope. We can only cross our fingers and hope in that one. For me, though, Dad, I did have a few positives on defense if you were out of your negatives, and I can go ahead and go over them now. And the first was that the red zone defense was quite good. We talked pregame that the Chargers had the second best touchdown percentage in the red zone in the league. Across 4 red zone trips, though, the Packers gave up just 1 touchdown. Packers now have the 7th lowest allowed red zone touchdown percentage in the league.
And in one of those, they gave up no points.
Yes. Well, okay. I was about to say, a lot of it was the Chargers just deciding not to score, fumbling at the 5. Thank you. Although,
wasn't that punched out?
Yeah, Preston Smith forced it out. I mean, it was kind of, but also like Eckler gets it, slips and falls down, gets back up and starts trying to run again. And you know how players tend to fumble when they've just fallen. That play
kind of went, started falling apart as soon as he fell and had to get back up.
Exactly. And then, Keenan Allen drops an easy touchdown. Keenan Allen drops what would have been first down on the right sideline. But still, holding a team that had been elite at scoring touchdowns to 1 of 4 is excellent. Beyond that, able to get pressure on Justin Herbert in this one. I know we talked about he was able to scramble out of that pressure a lot, but they still got pressure. They were still winning up front. 21 total pressures for the Packers is the most they've had since week 2. That's per PFF. 6 pressures for Kenny, 5 pressures for Preston, and 4 other players with 2 pressures each. Great day at the office for those guys up front, except for just not quite getting home. And then the last one I had was Carrington Valentine, just continued promising performances. The Packers really might have a starting outside corner on their hands that they got in the 7th round. 3 catches on 8 targets today for just 22 yards, according to PFF. Interestingly, PFF had him with no pass breakups, while ESPN had him with 3 passes defensed. I'm going to choose to go with that 3 number because, why not? And then according to Zach Jacobson on Twitter, who is in turn citing PFF, when he was guarding Keenan Allen, just 4 targets for 1 catch and 6 yards with 2 drops. But, 4 targets, 1 catch, 6 yards is very good coverage, especially on a top receiver in the league who otherwise completely torched the Packers on the day. And this is also per Zach Jacobson on Twitter. Since trading Rasul Douglas, Carrington Valentine in those games, 18 targets, just 5 receptions, 64 yards, and a 60.4 passer rating when targeted. He's a good player. He is a good outside cover corner. Big,
and teams have been doing exactly what you do. Oh, the new guy. There's a rookie in. It's a new guy. Let's see if we can torch him. And
freshman? Give me a buck.
Give me a buck. The teams have frequently had success against the Packers in these situations. And I feel like the Packers have not done this enough. But Carrington Valentine has held up when he's been getting targeted
he's more than held up. I mean,
cover. Yeah.
He's had, after struggling in that Broncos game, I would say outside of that game.
With Cortland Sutton.
With Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. He has played out of his mind besides that. I mean, he really shut down Puka Nacua. We talked last week about how Deontay Johnson and George Pickens combined for 5 catches on 9 targets. And I know he had that pass interference in the Pittsburgh game that kind of moved Pittsburgh down the field at one point. But again, in this game, it's not normal. This is not normal for a 7th round rookie to be playing this good at corner. This is a position where you take a guy in the 1st round and you're like, oh, it doesn't really matter how he looks this year because corner is the hardest position to learn.
He's not ready. Yeah.
He's not. It's okay if he doesn't look good.
Don't judge him too early.
Exactly. And Carrington Valentine, if a 1st round rookie was playing this well, I would be like, wow, that's really exciting. Think about what he could do in year 2. I mean, man, it's very exciting, and he's got the attitude of an outside corner too. He talks a lot.
Is this Gutekunst's best draft class, or at least
it's
performance as rookies?
Performance as rookies?
Because we can't tell how good they're going to be in the long run. But in terms of rookie performance of a draft class, this might be the best.
Well, it's this year or last year. Last year when you had Tom, Dobbs, Enigbare, Christian Watson.
And Watson.
Right.
So he's really hit 2 good drafts in a row.
Yes. And it does hurt, maybe. We'll see what Walker and Wyatt end up being. I don't think we really know yet. I think they're still I think they're still
2
higher.
first rounders. We'll see if they're drafted as high as they should have been.
And they've been, I think, good, but I just think maybe the expectations were even a little higher than how they've played so far. But there's still plenty of time for them to reach those expectations. But you're right, 2 back-to-back quite good draft classes, especially also Rasheed Walker in last year's class too, who's now both their starting tackles were day 3 picks from 2 years ago. Isn't that crazy to think about? But yeah, I would say definitely so far early returns on the last 2 draft classes from Gutekunst have been quite good, which maybe making up for some, sins of the past in some other draft classes, but we don't need to talk about those right now. Dad, positives from the defense. I've kind of been rambling for a little bit.
Yeah. So I really just mostly, besides shouting out the Wisconsin Sun, helping defend the Chargers receivers, give a shout out to Kenny Clark, who led the defense in PFF grade with an elite 89.8, even though he did have a missed tackle. The rest of his game was so good. So you mentioned he had the 6 total pressures. And he also came through in critical situations of the game. He had a part of the pressure that led to the sack that ended the Chargers' second to last drive and forced them to punt. He gets pressure through the lineman trying to block him, pushes Herbert back so that then Gary sacks him. And then he bats down the pass that basically ends the game.
Yep. Game-winning pass
swats
breakup.
that thing so far back that Herbert can't even catch it to try to run with it. How would you like that? If the pass is swatted, it goes back to him, and then he manages to scramble around and get the first down afterwards.
It would have been very.
That's what I was waiting for when I saw that ball going back to him.
It would have been on brand.
Like, thank goodness that ball hit the ground, so he can't pick it up and run with it.
I mean, if he had, I would have just been like, that's fair is what I would say. With all the drops the Chargers had throughout this game, I'd be like,
he had to do it himself.
I think that is fair.
He had to throw a pass to himself to get the first down. Oh man! Honestly, then I would give, even though some of it was helped by like the drop by Quentin Johnston. That I should have mentioned that as a bad thing, where it's just like defensive back slows up and gives him like a free lay. But they did come through with 2 stops after the Packers' last score to end the game.
Yeah,
with this getting the sack on third. Down
stops in quotes, because really that Quentin Johnson bomb should have been completed because Carrington Valentine kind of turns him loose. He slows up on it. He just doesn't think the ball's coming. And then
I don't know what the story is. He was expecting help.
He eases up. I think he eases up because Quentin Johnson eases up, and Quentin Johnson eases up because I guess he doesn't think he's getting the ball. And thank goodness he does.
And then the ball's like bobbling around for a couple seconds before it actually hits the ground. But they get the sack on third down. They get the batted ball on fourth down.
Yeah.
So
they made plays
they made plays on critical downs.
That's definitely
down the stretch.
Yeah.
So you might say they got a little help on the earlier downs, but on the critical downs, they made plays.
I do think it is funny that Matt LaFleur is complimenting Joe Barry on being aggressive at the end and playing a single high safety. And that single high safety they got absolutely burned in that look with Quentin Johnson streaking down the sideline for what could have been either the go-ahead touchdown or the game-tying field goal.
Game-winning.
And that play is just like the fact that the coverage allowed that to happen just is deleted from Matt LaFleur's
memory
because
already.
He didn't catch it, so it doesn't matter. But anyway, I digress.
In his brain, he's like, "Oh, Joe Barry did a great job to make him drop that pass.
2 straight stops.
He deserves all the credit."
Yeah, man. But anyway, Dad, should we transition into special teams or anything else about the defense that made you think? Oh, this is one actually I had. I had something that made me think on defense.
Oh, I had something that made me think too, but go ahead. You go with yours first.
Okay, the one that made me think was, I felt watching this game, the run defense was horrible again. They allowed 150 yards on 24 carries, which is just over 5 yards a carry. It feels really bad. Oddly enough, the advanced stats felt the Packers had a really good day defending the run. They had the 5th lowest success rate allowed in Week 11, and just to remind people, success rate is 40% of the yards needed to be gained on first down, 60% of the yards needed to be gained on second down, and 100% of the yards to be gained on third and fourth down. So really good success rate allowed on defense, and then also had the lowest rush EPA allowed in Week 11. A big part of that is that fumble forced at the goal line is a huge swing in expected points. So that'll definitely help. Certainly couldn't hurt. But at the same time, the box score numbers are like, wow, the Packers really struggled to defend the run. But
more they struggled to defend the run of the quarterback.
Yeah, but that's included in rush expected points added and rush success.
But in terms of like standard rush play as opposed to scrambles, I felt like they did a pretty good job. They let Eckler break free wide one time on a 3rd and short, but they did otherwise a decent job on the standard rush plays.
I felt watching it that they didn't, but the advanced stats will agree with you. The advanced stats agree with you that they defended the run well.
I think one thing that happened is as the game went on, I think they started doing a better job on standard rush plays.
Well, and I don't want to say advanced stats because advanced stats I feel like always sounds dismissive when people say it. The stats, the actual stats, the numbers say that you are right, that they defended the run well. And it's true that they defended the run better as the game went on, specifically in the 4th quarter. But I was like, I wonder if it's just that one big play that they had that really affected the EPA. And so I looked only at quarters 1 to 3, and they were still like a good run defense. Quarters 1 to 3 is still like a negative EPA. Allowed.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if like their EPA grade was like 75% that one play or something like that. So that is what you're checking for
of a game. Like it really is.
Yeah.
But either way,
that's 7 points off the board.
Exactly.
I think anyway.
Yeah, probably. Let's be honest here. But hey, maybe not. The Packers' red zone defense has been really good this year, so maybe not. But anyway, that was the thing that made me think is in my research for this game, my initial thoughts on how the run defense played was, pivoted over by looking more at the actual numbers and the actual success that the Chargers were having on the ground, not just how it felt like they were moving the ball on the ground against us. Dad, what did you think in this one?
So things I'm going to say, and what I'm thinking about is Brooks the second best defensive lineman on the team right now. He was, in terms of rookies, he's way ahead of Wooden in snaps now. This week was 25-5. And over the last 3 games, it's 62 snaps to 30. He had the second best defensive grade on the whole team, so not just defensive linemen, behind Kenny Clark this week. And last week, amongst the defensive linemen, that group, he had the second best grade behind Kenny. So is he the second best defensive lineman on the team now, ahead of Slayton, ahead of Wyatt?
I hadn't really thought about it, but now that you're bringing up, I'm going to be watching him even more closely because I did think he looked good again in this game, and Wyatt's kind of slowed down a little bit.
He's making plays almost every week.
Yeah, and Wyatt's not playing poorly, but Brooks is playing quite well. I think I would still have Brooks closer to like third, fourth, but probably closer to third now because it's not like Slayton's been doing a whole lot up front. But definitely something to keep in mind because he's coming for that number 2 spot, and we'll see if the snap counts reflect that going forward. I think they still like Wyatt more in terms of like
he's not caught up to Wyatt in terms of snaps, but he is starting to leave Wooden behind.
Yeah, I didn't see Wooden out there hardly at all in this game.
I think he had 5 snaps.
Yeah, that's what you said. But anyway, Dad, let's move on to special teams and start wrapping this thing up. Interesting piece of note is with Dallin Levitt being released. Do you think that had anything to do with the double penalty to start the game?
Man, was LaFleur pissed.
Matt LaFleur was really pissed. Really
he
pissed.
wanted to chase him out of the stadium right then and there.
Yeah, and this is a guy who, Dallin Levitt, I've always had some qualms with because you're only here for special teams and you lead the league in special teams penalties. And all you're here to do is play special teams. And for him to get a holding and then an unsportsmanlike conduct, interaction with an official, it's like, dude, know your role on the team. Know your role. But anyway, now he's out the door.
It was so egregious that he managed to commit 2 fouls in one play that both counted.
Yes. And
just one of them.
And the special teams, still bad. Still almost costing them games. Almost cost them this game. It did cost them the Pittsburgh game in a lot of ways. Dad, you had more on this, but the interesting thing I had was just that I think Zane Anderson is probably going to be taking a lot of Dallin Levitt snaps because Anderson, I think, has 3 tackles on special teams since, getting a more cemented role there, which is pretty good. He had a nice tackle on punt coverage today, or in this game, I should say. But Dad, special teams, what'd you think?
Yeah, I actually felt watching the game because there's a lot of talk about how good the Chargers' return game was. And I thought their punt coverage was pretty good. The Chargers were coming in, or actually, I think even after this game, they're second in the league now in punt return average at 15.7. And Green Bay only gave up 1 return for 6 yards. So that's pretty good. Now Carlson had a bit of a rough game, or the kick operation had a bit of a rough game. He had a missed PAT, which we're like, that's going to come and bite us again.
The missed PAT, I don't know how he missed it. The angle is weird. It's like, I was like, that didn't go in? I was stunned, actually, that it didn't go in. I was like, I had to look at it twice.
it doesn't look like it's going that wide, right? Then it like just slips outside of the upright.
I don't know. It just phases. And then the 52-yarder, the snap is horrible. It's really bad. It's on Whelan's right hip. He has to bring it all the way around, and I don't think Carlson sees the football until he's already mid-swing, which I can't imagine how hard it is swinging at a target and just being like, it's going to be there. I don't see it, but it's going to be there.
Tear a ligament if it's not there.
Like
you're like Charlie, you're gonna get Charlie Brown and like go fly into the air, land it flat on your back.
And it's a bit of hyperbole, but I just thought the ball got to that spot so late because the snap was so off target. It was so bad. The whole operation was
that
bad.
one leaves his foot from the beginning very weirdly. When he first impacts, like, oh man, what's going on with that kick? It's low, it's weak, it's right.
Yeah. I think this is more about the operation than it is about Carlson. And, he made an extra point to end the game. I always feel like if a kicker goes out on a make, it's like, all right, we're getting ready for next week. We're on to the...
I can't leave this court until I make one last layup.
Yeah,
I can't leave on a missed shot.
Exactly.
I'm going to keep kicking until I get a make.
Yeah, and so I'm not really worried about a missed 50-plus yard. I'm a little worried about the extra point, but it was harder to see how the operation looked on that one because the angle was from behind the goalposts as opposed to behind the kicker. But Dad, I didn't really have anything else for the special teams in this one. Whelan had a pretty good punt. It was besides that, it was a pretty nondescript day from pretty much everyone else involved. Should we move on to player of the game, Dad? Who did you have in this one?
So this time I went with Jordan Love. Jordan Love. I snubbed him last week. He had another good week, including getting a game-winning drive, go-ahead touchdown in the fourth quarter with less than 3 minutes to go. I thought he was making some really nice throws on the move. Rolling left and throwing right and making some downfield throws for touchdowns.
Yeah.
I thought
great game.
I had a really, really nice game.
I would say back-to-back, like games where I was like, that's the best game Jordan Love has played. Just said that last week. It's like, that's the best game Jordan Love has played. Say it this week. And you love to see it.
So he's trending up.
Hopefully. For me, player of the game was Jaden Reed. Like I said earlier, I teased it. 3 carries for 46 yards and a touchdown, 4 catches for 46 yards. Led the team in rushing, led the team in overall all-purpose yards. Just another great game from him. Back-to-back great games. They look like they really found something with him. He's quick. And
maybe the Packers were right with that 4.37 they were spouting.
Yeah, I was going to say,
offseason.
I was like, I'm sure you timed it.
We
like
were
a
very
flat.
skeptical of that.
Well, they've done this before. They did this with
claiming.
Jay Sternberger. They've done this with like a number of players where like we haven't timed like a full 1/10 of a second faster. It's like, okay, whose clocks are you using? You might need to reset those. Anyway,
I think they had Wicks significantly faster.
He looked significantly faster than his time too. So maybe they got the clocks finally got him right in this one. But yeah, Jaden Reed just so dynamic with the ball in his hands. He's such a fun player to watch. The Packers haven't had like a twitched up player like this. I feel like since like prime Randall Cobb. I mean, they wanted Amari to be this. Amari did not have this kind of movement skills at all. No, not at all.
Yeah, so we've got a guy who can be a legitimate
threat with the ball in his hands.
And from the slot with the ball in his hands, run after catch.
Doesn't need to catch it on the move. Like Watson, I wanted to couch the way I was phrasing it like specifically because Watson's obviously super exciting with the ball in his hands. But it's different when you have a player who can just catch it at a standstill and create as opposed to a player like it's still exciting to have a player like Watson where it's like at any point, if he catches the ball on the move, he could just take it the whole way.
You do want to get him when he's already moving, really.
Yeah, because he's not super
like
fast.
Some of those crossers where he or even like the jet sweeps and things, you hand to him, it goes around the end, or you get him while he's running across the field, and then he can beat the defender to the side, to the edge and go the distance.
Yeah, and just to like tack on one more thing for Watson's, like I felt like in this game they used him as a complementary piece, which worked better, I think, as opposed to trying to force him the ball, which I think they had done way too much of to start the season.
This season, they've been like, we've got to get him involved. We've got to get him involved. And it's like, no, you got to make the right plays.
Yeah. And it had been kind of playing out how you would expect it to. But anyway, this has been Father Son Packers Podcast. Dad, anything else you want to add on before we call it? Because we are getting a little long on time.
I think we've covered it.
Yeah. Another very solid game from Jordan Love, stacking success. A great game from the rookie pass catchers. A fun game for people who were excited about this like young Packers team and the potential that they had, because I think a lot of players on both sides of the ball showed not just potential, but like, hey, they're starting to turn some of that potential into actual tangible skill on the field, which is all we really asked for coming into this season as Packers fans. If you like what you heard here today, come give us a follow on Twitter at FatherSonPacker. We tweet out when we have new episodes, articles we find interesting, etc., etc. Come subscribe to us on your podcast platform of choice, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. If you subscribe to us there, we would really appreciate it. Thank you again for listening. We'll be doing a preview for the Thanksgiving game later this week. Hopefully, we'll have it out Wednesday night so you can listen to it Thursday morning before the game starts, before all the family gets there and everything is hectic, or have it on in the kitchen while you're cooking. You never know. But anyway, thanks so much for listening. And until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.